Wanted to give you an update on what our office is involved in and how we're working with MEMA and FEMA and other federal and state agencies regarding the weather systems that have unfortunately moved into and through the state since December. Tornadoes that have occurred causing great damage throughout the state of Mississippi. Particularly, more people are familiar with Columbus than other areas, but there were other areas that had been damaged. Some 1,000 homes have been affected and 300 destroyed. Now we're moving into a time that began on or about the 19th of February when heavy rains moved into the state and we began to see flooding and rivers rising. This has become a situation now that we are looking at over 500,000 acres that is currently underwater in the Mississippi Delta. Not only destructions of property that is ongoing there because of the flooding, but an agricultural disaster that is in the making. If the rains continue, and they will at some point, snow will begin to melt. So we have not yet seen the worst of the flooding and the rising of the rivers that will occur along the Mississippi and Yazoo rivers. Those rains that began on the 19th of February were certainly a major part of this. So we are looking at what the answers to the flooding might be, not only now, but into the future. As some of you may remember, the pumps that had been recommended by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers were never installed into the Yazoo backwater to relieve the water conditions and the flooding conditions in that area. EPA had the authority to veto the installation of those pumps in 2008. We are now asking the EPA. I have met with Mary Walker, the EPA Regional Director, and we will formally ask EPA to review that veto of those pumps, to listen to the Corps of Engineers, to meet with them, to begin that discussion again, an installation of the pumps that would have been able to remove several feet of water from the backwaters of the Yazoo, and I think relieve a great deal of the damage that would be affected in the property and homes that are in that area. I will tell you that the first order of emergency declaring a state of emergency occurred on the 26th of February following the tornadoes that occurred throughout 54 counties in the state of Mississippi with some damage, 54 of the 82. We requested that federal disaster area by a letter to the President of the United States on the 14th of February due to those December storms. Later, again, on the February 26th declaration, we have worked carefully with MEMA to try to assess the damage. As I said early, 54 of the 82 counties with some damage to it. So a short time ago, I signed another request for a federal declaration of disaster from the President of the United States. That request went out today to the President, and we expect to hear from them very soon about that for relief in and around the flooded areas. We will have additional information we will be able to furnish to the President and to FEMA after some of the water has gone down. Quite honestly, it is impossible just now for our personnel to get into the flooded area to determine the exact amount of the damage. But we are looking to the President and to FEMA, working through the Stafford Act, to be able to provide some relief and assistance. I'll be reaching out this afternoon to Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue at 4:15 this afternoon to determine what relief we might be able to seek from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Secretary Dupree is well aware of the conditions that exist in the Mississippi Delta with the flooding. He has long been a supporter of the state of Mississippi and our agricultural economy, and I look forward to talking to the Secretary. I will now turn to Michel. Colonel Michel, of course, Director of the Emergency Management Operation here in Mississippi, has been doing a remarkable job He and his team have not stopped since Christmas. It has been, it seems, one weather event after another that they and the local responders have taken on as a challenge to be able to help those that have been affected by these weather conditions. And Colonel Michel, I'll turn to you for additional information about the areas that will be open for housing resources.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor said, this has been a very long and trying time. You know, our hearts go out to those that have been affected by these storms and these floods for sure. It's not over, and it's going to be a while. Let me just first address to Governor Bryant's point. Yesterday, we had 5 centers that were initiated to be opened up to assist people with individual housing needs. Those applications will begin being accepted in these locations. There'll be one center will be located in Grenada, Mississippi, another in Columbus, Mississippi, another in the city of Saltillo, another in Yazoo City, and also in the city of Vicksburg. These areas will be accepting applications for those that will qualify for individual housing assistance. That is assistance that we will be offering through our state disaster trust fund, and that will be made available until the federal disaster assistance begins to kick in. It's important to know that this is going to continue to be a very long process. As this flood waters continue to rise in the backwaters, we will be adding additional counties as declarations. So this first declaration that we did, because there are so many areas that are still underwater, the damage assessments cannot be completed in those areas. So what we have done to expedite the request for federal declaration is those areas that we completed damage assessments where those amounts did meet our state's threshold. We submitted that, and also blanket included those counties that have been affected by the storms, and we'll be able to finish those damage assessments when those are completed after floodwaters recede. There's a lot of public infrastructure underneath that water, roads, bridges that will certainly be affected by that we'll have to capture at that time. Again, I want to thank the Governor for his support and hard work in getting this federal declaration completed and getting that to the White House. We certainly expect to get a very rapid response in much the same way we did on our last federal declaration. Mississippi has, again, this will be our second federal declaration that we would have gotten this year already, and we're not even into the month of April yet. So be patient with us, continue to work with us, and continue to report any issues or needs that you have through your local emergency management agencies. And my folks will continue to be in the field throughout the end of this process, which we hope will come very soon. Thank you.
Again, we want to thank first responders and the Red Cross, who has served hundreds, if not thousands, of meals to people who have been in need, other volunteer organizations that exist there. We are working again with not only those at FEMA, who we expect to be again back into the state very shortly, but all the way to the President of the United States, Secretary of Agriculture, and with EPA. So we expect progress to be made, but it is still difficult for those that live in the affected area to try to withstand one of the greatest floods that we've seen in the last decade or so, realizing that it will take time for federal and state agencies to respond. Opening the shelters and the opportunity for temporary housing will be a first good step for us, and we will continue to work to provide relief to those individuals that have been affected by the flooding. But I will say it will continue. If we are asked to move, if occupants are asked to move from a particular area in the Delta, I would encourage you to do that. We do not want to lose one life because of this flooding, and it will be important for everyone to listen to their emergency management declarations. And if there is a mandatory evacuation, I would ask that you evacuate those areas before we have to send someone in to relieve you and to rescue you from an area that you have been asked to leave. I know it's hard to leave their homes, particularly in areas like Eagle Lake, but it could be very challenging as the waters continue to rise in that area. Thank you. We'll take questions if you might have some now. We will furnish you as much information as we have, give you a copy of the request for the President for Federal Declaration, and give you as much information we have about what homes, or the homes and structures that have been damaged, so that you might be able to share that with your listeners and viewers.
Governor, this week was the first week of spring and there's still a lot of snow melt, a lot of water that's coming. What are you expecting to happen over the next couple of months?
I expect us to be able to respond as best we can to search and rescue, for example. If we have to literally go in and save people from a flooded area, that's our first priority, is life and safety of the people that are there. We will continue to work with our federal partners to see what relief can be provided after the water goes down. But quite honestly, there's very little we can do of stopping this flood. It is on its way. The snows will melt, rainfall will continue. You see what's happening in Nebraska and other states that are suffering through this. We are prepared for it, and we will respond to it as we do every disaster with all that we have.
Governor, how will this flood possibly compare to 2011?
In some areas, and Colonel, I'll let you respond to that. In some areas, it'll be worse, and in others, not. There is the Yazoo backwater flooding is particularly challenging to us just now, but I'll let the Colonel respond to some of that. Sure.
So with comparison to the 2011 flood for what we're experiencing now, the Mississippi River stages have not yet met those crest levels. So actually the Mississippi River, even though it is at flood stage or above flood stage, it is still lower than what it was in 2011. The backwater, however, is much greater. It reached last week its record height, and that is a combination of the Mississippi River being at the stage that it is, combined with all of the rain that we received. And to the question that was asked earlier about, what are we going to expect with the ice thaw, the spring thaw? As the Mississippi River comes down, and we expect it to come down and up and down and up several times. What we have to do is time the level of the Mississippi River so that we can open the steel bayou structure, get water out of the backwater as much as we can until the Mississippi River comes back up to the level where it has to be shut. So it's a chess game of sorts. Corps is doing an excellent job managing that. But in comparison levels, the Mississippi River is lower than it was in 11. In backwater is much higher.
In particular, when it comes to the backwater flooding, do you think there could have been anything to be done to prevent?
With what we have right now, no. Now with the Yazoo pumping station, as the governor addressed earlier, and he has worked extremely hard in getting that brought back to the table for discussion. There was mitigation efforts that could have been made as much as 5 feet with that. But here's an issue that needs to be put out. That project is a 4-year project. Had it been there, it certainly would have mitigated and made a difference, yes. But other than that, the Corps has done everything that they can do at Muddy Bayou and at the Steel Bayou structure and working and getting relief where we can. It's just, there's water everywhere, so you can't put water where water already is.
Why did the pumps go off the table? Like, what happened?
The pumps, they went off the table. It was an environmental study that basically stopped it with the EPA at that particular time. And it's of course, a very long process, but that is what stopped it, and that's what the governor has had meetings with EPA very recently in the past few days, and it is being looked at and discussed now very seriously.
Did they cite any reasons, or was it a monetary issue?
It was not a monetary issue. It was environmental issues.
Are there any plans that are going to be set in place after you do evaluations of heavy flooded areas within the Delta to kind of, I know you can't stop flooding, but to alleviate that pressure over time for those people?
Yeah, again, the Army Corps of Engineers has looked at every option that's available, met with them again this morning with the Corps and with the levee board. And again, with the height of the Mississippi River currently where it is, it's got to drop at least somewhere in the range of 48 feet before they can get any structure out of the Steel Bayou. And with as much water as in the backwater right now, it could take a very long time to get it out. So it's just going to be, it's a waiting game, and we're just going to have to work through it. It's a very difficult situation for those folks in the Delta, particularly those farmers that depend on that farmland. But it's really nothing to do at this point in time. Wait on the weather, wait on the river to drop, get as much water out of the backwater as we can when it does drop to that level.
Yeah, we have time for one more question. The governor has a second meeting that he needs to get to, but if you have one.
Many times have talked about flood insurance. He brought that up at one of the town hall meetings. Can you talk about that?
Well, I'm not the expert on that. We could reach out to one of the federal delegations if you want to respond to that, but I will respond to if the pumps could have mitigated that. In 2008, because of environmental concerns, EPA did veto those. We have the funding through the United States Congress, and I believe when Thad Cochran was there, it was part of his schedule to make sure that he had that into appropriations bills. So we're working hard to now not just look at the current flooding, but look at it for the next 4 years and the next 5 years. And the pumps will be a big help to that. And thank goodness to both of our United States senators who have written letters in support to the EPA to put that project back on course. Thank you.
Thank you.